Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. JP Morgan is dominating the gold market. Let's explore! Yes, this is very interesting news indeed. Taking the crown from Goldman Sachs, apparently. JP Morgan, according to the Reuters here, is dominating the gold market with a record $1 billion in precious metals revenue. Wow. So JP Morgan earned record revenue of around $1 billion so far this year from trading, storing, and financing precious metals, vastly outperforming rival banks. Two sources familiar with the matter told Reuters. Here we see a pretty interesting picture of an employee that holding gold bars before the refining process at African Gold Refinery in Entebbe, Uganda. So look at that picture. Pretty wild to see indeed. Yes. The coronavirus has created a bonanza for investment banks dealing in gold, silver, and other precious metals by triggering massive investor purchases and rupturing the normal workings of the market. But JP Morgan has dominated, growing its share of the market. And it makes you wonder, what's going on behind the scenes and how much of this stuff is going on. I bet you a lot of this is an electronic market, and we know how much of that is backed by the physical. Not nearly enough. And so therefore, with that being said, with their revenue from this, it makes you wonder, this could be at least an anecdotal or a perceptive, definitely a motive for manipulation. And again, we know it's happening, at least on the micro scale. And JP Morgan has been at the center of it. But nonetheless, a lot of that is ended, or at least a lot of what has been charged was basically dating back to 2016. Could it still be going on to some extent? I think in some ways, possibly, maybe on a smaller scale yet. But nonetheless, JP Morgan has dominated, growing its share of the market. The U.S. bank's revenue by mid-November accounts for at least half of the $1.7 billion to $2 billion that consultancy McKinsey CIB Insights estimates the top 10 investment banks combined will make this year from precious metals, mostly gold. Its commodities division is on track to bring in more than $1.5 billion this year and could challenge Goldman Sachs for the title of top earner, the sources said. JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs declined to comment about this. Individual investment banks have rarely made more than $1 billion in commodities in recent years, and none ever have earned more than $600 million in precious metals in a single year, said George Kuznetsov at McKinsey CIB Insights, and that is telling. I think that shows that there is a lot more interest in the precious metals. We've seen unprecedented demand. We've seen unprecedented price movements, I think. And we saw gold especially top its all-time record high in nominal dollars. And so here we can see the commodities bonanza here, which really isn't blown up from the previous picture. But here we can see commodities-related revenues at the world's 10 biggest investment banks boomed this year as the coronavirus roiled markets. We can see from 2018 how these bar charts have broken down between softs and other precious metals, which is a slightly different color, but it's kind of hard to tell the distinguishing there of the two. I guess the softs and others are the very, very highly colored thing at the top, and it's barely showing on this fourth quarter of 2020. Base metals a little darker blue, power and gas darker blue yet, oil with a very, very dark sea blue, and cross commodities with the darkest blue there at the bottom. So we'll see here the third quarter of 2020 rocketed up high with all these commodities, especially oil. And I think a lot of that was, we remember the time when oil went negative, $39 a barrel. I imagine there was a lot of activity buying that out and moving around. In fact, I think even President Trump had mentioned that they were going to be buying a bunch for their reserves. Smart move by the president for that one. And so we can see, because of that, power and gas obviously does go up. And we're seeing base metals and precious metals, pretty big movements in the third quarter for precious metals. The most, except for the fourth quarter here, the third and fourth quarters way out top for these precious metals for all of since 2018, where the record is. But yes, indeed, that third quarter with everything is very high, but fourth quarter precious metals is tough, is really on top there. People wondering about COMEX deliveries for December. We shall see. This is going to put a lot of pressure on it, where people are going to want to either cash out or they're going to want to take delivery. So we'll see how that plays out for sure. It'll be quite fascinating indeed to see where that goes. JP Morgan is the largest bank in the United States and one of the biggest in the world. It sits at the heart of the global bullion market, and its activities span trading physical bars to derivatives, running vaults, and clearing trades in London, the biggest trade hub. And yes, and it's no wonder they make big news when we hear about cases that we've covered on this channel, when news broke about manipulation and the results of that from the settlements and the like. So this revenue windfall is driving profit, has been the clamor for gold and silver from investors, mainly in Europe and North America, worried the coronavirus pandemic and money printing by central banks could devalue other assets. These investors pushed gold prices to record highs above $2,000 an ounce earlier this year. Added to that are profits earned on the COMEX futures exchange in New York, where supply issues earlier this year made it more lucrative for those with access to physical gold to trade precious metals. Yes, and that was one of the big problems discussed in this channel as well. It's very interesting indeed. And again, when people are going to put pressure on them to take delivery of this physical, this is what some people predict could, collapse the COMEX. Banks such as JP Morgan took advantage of opportunities on COMEX and helped clients do the same. JP Morgan's client business dwarfs that of others. And data from CME Group, which stands for the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which runs COMEX, show JP Morgan's clients account for 1/3 of all trade in gold bars registered with the exchange in October, and more than 2/5 in June. Like other big banks, JP Morgan was able to get and ship metal cheaply and in large quantities when other smaller traders could not, sources said. The revenue windfall will likely fade as trading on COMEX reverts to normal patterns, but high gold prices and interest from investors means this business will remain profitable, that's for sure. 2020 is going to be an outlier year, said Kuznetsov at McKinsey, and I think that is the understatement of the year for sure. That is going to be an outlier year. We saw that from the commodities bonanza chart there, and how the third quarter had reacted, and we're not through the fourth quarter yet. So interesting indeed. This shiny metal, gold, is really turning heads this year. And yes, we know other asset classes are up, but you know what? Gold has sustained its value for millennia. And today it's still making news, and it is involved in the markets, and it's at the core of finance in the world today. And that will not change no matter what happens, no matter how much they may try to suppress it, either with this big reset that they're talking about or other factors. Gold remains on top, and it captures the hearts and minds of the world of finance and people alike, and cultures, and in our investment and hedging strategies. Yes, even in the investment world, people, and I really do think that's a large part of what is going on with the GLD and the SLV with the ETFs. I think more people are likely to invest in it with those vehicles than they are as a safe haven. Yea, though, they do look at it as a safe haven in those investment vehicles as well, when they get nervous about other aspects. But you know what happened? Just we saw in March, people sell off for the safety of cash. And make no mistake, cash is, in a way, still king. But at least in the terms of on a monetary aspect, and I'm talking about the U.S. dollar, as it's traded among 60% of transactions around the world. But nonetheless, the ultimate form of money indeed is gold, traded between central banks and understood as highly liquid. There it is. It does capture us for sure. And what we do. But this news about J.P. Morgan, it is something else for sure to see how they are dominating the gold market here. So there you have it. Post your thoughts in the comment section below. Would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.